Millionaire threw a napkin at a black waitress, but her scar told a story that left him shaken. He came into the restaurant like he owned the air in a tailored suit, loud laughter, and a wallet that made people nervous. When his meal didn't arrive fast enough, he flicked a napkin across the room and let it land on a black waitress like she was part of the table setting. She didn't flinch, she simply reached up to adjust her collar and a long, jagged scar flashed beneath the fabric, the kind that doesn't come from a kitchen accident. The room went quiet for a reason no one expected. What did that scar mean, and why did it make the millionaire turn pale? Before that night, the world knew her only as another black woman in a black uniform. Moving quickly between linen-covered tables while pretending not to notice the stares, her name was Maya, and her life ran on schedules and survival morning bus rides, double shifts, aching feet, and the quiet math of rent versus groceries. She worked at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, the kind where the lighting was soft, the plates were heavy, and the guests often acted like service came with ownership. Maya had learned how to stay invisible and excellent at the same time. She kept her hair neat, her voice low, her smile ready. Not because she wanted to, but because she'd seen what happened when people like her were perceived as too loud, too slow, or simply to present. Some nights, the disrespect was subtle, the fingers snapping, the eyes sliding past her. The credit cards dropped on the table like a test. Other nights it was open, careless cruelties, poken like a joke so no one had to admit what it really was. Under her collar, she carried a scar she never explained. It wasn't the kind of mark you got from a busy kitchen or a clumsy fall. It was old, deliberate, and carefully hidden, as if the story behind it was still dangerous. That evening, the restaurant prepared for a high-profile reservation, one of those tables everyone catered to, the kind that made managers nervous and staff whisper. Maya took a steady breath and stepped onto the floor, unaware that the next few minutes would drag her past politeness, past patience, and straight into something the room wouldn't be able to ignore. The reservation didn't just bring money into the dining room. It brought a kind of pressure that made everyone stand straighter. The man at the center of it was Everett Carlyle, a self-made millionaire whose name sat on charity plaques and business magazines, the kind of person people thanked before he even did anything. He arrived with a small crowd that laughed a little too loudly, as if they were reminding the room who mattered. Maya was assigned to the table because she was steady. She didn't spill, didn't stumble, didn't react. The manager liked that about her. But from the moment she stepped into their orbit, the air changed. Carlyle barely looked at her when she set down water. His attention moved through her like she wasn't there, then snapped back only to correct her, test her, and make her repeat herself. It wasn't just impatience. It was the casual certainty that she was beneath him, that her time and dignity were his to spend. The requests stacked up fast new silverware, a different glass, the same dish remade with tiny changes. Each time Maya returned, the table grew more animated, their amusement feeding off the small control they had over her. Nearby diners pretended not to notice, the way people often do when cruelty arrives, dressed as high standards. In the kitchen, the chef pushed back against the endless adjustments, and minutes slipped by. Maya felt the delay like heat under her skin. She kept her shoulders relaxed and her face calm, even as she sensed eyes following her movements, waiting for her to break. Then it happened in a flash of entitlement. Carlyle, irritated by the wait, flicked his wrist and sent a folded napkin sailing across the space between them. It landed against Maya's chest and slid down her uniform like a thrown insult made physical. The laughter at the table hit a sharp, uncomfortable edge. A few people froze mid-bite. A glass clinked too loudly in the sudden hush. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She simply reached up, adjusted the collar that had shifted on the fabric, pulled back just enough to reveal what she always kept hidden. A long, jagged scar curved along her skin, old but unmistakable. Not an accident, not a workplace mishap. Something inflicted. Carlyle's face changed so quickly, it was like watching someone lose blood. The confidence drained out of him. His posture stiffened, and his eyes locked onto that mark with a recognition that didn't belong in a restaurant. For the first time all night, he was staring at Maya like she was not invisible at all but familiar. And as the manager hurried toward the table to smooth everything over, Carlyle didn't look at him. He kept watching Maya, as if the scar had just opened a door to a past he'd spent years paying to keep closed. and he was about to step through it. The manager reached the table with a practiced smile and the kind of apology reserved for wealthy tempers, but the more he leaned toward Carlyle, the more his body angled away from Maya like she was the problem that needed to be removed. He guided her back a step, hand hovering near her elbow, already signaling consequences she couldn't afford. Maya stood perfectly still, her chest rising slow, her face calm in a way that didn't match the moment. The napkin lay crumpled on the floor between polished shoes, a small white flag of surrender she refused to pick up. Around them, the dining room kept pretending to eat, pretending not to listen, until the silence became impossible to ignore. Carlyle's eyes didn't leave her neck. They flicked from the scar to his own hand, where an old signet ring sat heavy on his finger. His knuckles tightened, then whitened, as if his body remembered something his reputation had buried. The man who had walked an untouchable suddenly looked like someone trying to outrun a memory. Maya reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a tiny velvet pouch, worn soft at the edges like it had been carried for years. She turned it over onto the tablecloth. A jagged piece of gold slid out, small, sharp, unmistakably expensive. Even from a distance, the etched crest caught the light. Carlyle's hand jerked toward his ring in a reflexive panic. The ring was there, but part of its edge was missing, a clean bite taken out of it long ago. Phones rose at nearby tables. A server froze mid-step. The manager's expression collapsed, his eyes darting between Maya's scar, the gold fragment, and Carlyle's trembling hand. Because now, it wasn't just a rude millionaire humiliating a waitress. It looked like a man being confronted by proof he couldn't pay off twice, and the entire room had become a witness. The manager's hand withdrew from Maya as if he'd been burned. In that moment, the hierarchy of the room shifted. Money and status suddenly felt smaller. Than evidence, Carlyle didn't laugh anymore. He sat, rigid eyes locked on the gold fragment, his breathing shallow, like a man who finally realized the past could show up in public. Maya remained steady, but the steadiness came from something hard-earned. Years earlier, she'd been one of the many faces pushed to the margins by Carlyle's expanding empire. Families displaced, workers dismissed, complaints ignored. When she tried to report what happened the night she got that scar, the system treated her pain like background noise. No one wanted a messy story attached to a powerful name, so she kept the only thing the man who hurt her had accidentally left behind, a broken piece of his own identity. Now, under bright restaurant lights, that invisible woman was holding a truth the room couldn't politely swallow. The phones that had been raised didn't lower. The staff who had learned to endure humiliation for tips didn't look away. Other guest people who had stayed silent through the napkin, through the smirks, through the casual disrespect finally had to confront what silence costs. Carlyle's reputation, built on donations and headlines, suddenly carried a shadow that money couldn't immediately soften. Maya didn't need revenge. She needed acknowledgement, safety, and a world where her humanity wasn't negotiable. And when she walked out of that restaurant, she didn't walk out as an employee who'd caused a scene. She walked out as proof that racism doesn't only live in hateful words, it lives in who gets believed, who gets protected, and who gets treated like they're disposable. Because if one napkin could expose years of harm, how many other scars are hidden under collars every day, waiting for someone to finally look?